Think how many times I talked with Tripp Tracy this hockey season. It's got to be 100, right? 15 in the postseason. I didn't do every regular season game. I think I missed about 6. But we talked sometimes on the show. It's about 100 times. Tripp, so I figure what's one more? How are you?
Hi, AG. And I enjoyed every bit of it with you.
Same with me.
I've known you for so long, and we're close personally, and professionally. I just thoroughly enjoyed our hot stoves this year more than any other year. How am I? It's a sting. It's so as a broadcaster, if it's just a brutal feeling today. And having been on that plane that got in at about 2-3 o'clock in the morning last night, whenever we landed. I can only imagine after all that they invested, what it's like for the players. I mean, that's just the honest truth. But I'm sure when you start to get some distance, we'll celebrate what a magical year that it was. And part of that is I thoroughly have enjoyed the journey with you.
So. But same here. So I'm curious. I don't know what you're even willing to divulge about the tenor of the flight back. Was there what was it like? Obviously, everybody is bummed because it's over. I kept saying it's not the fall, it's the sudden stop. And even though you're down 3-0 and they've played so obviously very well, could have won any of the games, could have won last night's game. What is the tenor? Is there any level of optimism, or is it just quiet reflection, sleeping?
It's quiet reflection. I mean, I can tell you that, like for instance, even after a loss, and there weren't a ton of losses in the regular season this year, or the last couple of regular seasons. There are two groups that even after a loss, it's a long season that guys play cards, and typically even after a loss in the playoffs, not an elimination loss, and nobody's playing cards. You could hear a pin drop. It just totally epitomized the total investment of the players and the organization, but that, more importantly, not importantly, but that definitely you could feel, AG, that they knew how close they were and how difficult, even with an elite team, which the Hurricanes have made it habit here recently to be an elite team, how difficult it is to even advance to the Eastern Conference Final. And you just don't know when that opportunity is going to present itself again. And simultaneously, I agreed with what you said last night. I can't remember which intermission it was. Last night, just like the other 3 games, Carolina could have swept the Florida Panthers. They didn't, but they could have. But last night was a different type of game. When I think about last night, I think about losing, going down 2-0, losing Slavin early, playing the majority of the night with 11 forwards with Nason in and out. Nature's even gone at one point in time, and they still found a way to tie it late. So a different type of game, in my view, than the other 3, but still right there. But yes, that plane, I think, was somber because what you'd hope for if you're a Hurricanes fan, that the players gave it everything that they had.
And there's no question that they did. Sebastian Aho is one of those guys who does that all the time. I didn't love his reaction. I don't know if it's related, but the way he played after the Slavin injury was kind of angry, panic, all over the place, a little bit undisciplined, and they needed him to kind of rein it in. I thought he did get better as the game wore on. What do you think ultimately, though, the difference in the series was? It's easy to say it was Sergei Bobrovsky because he was obviously the best. I don't know if he was the best player in the series. He certainly was impenetrable at times. But what do you think the ultimate difference was between these two teams?
First of all, I do agree with you. I mean, I think Aho did everything that you would ask of him in the entirety of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
With all the focus and the attention. But I did think that as he seemingly always channels his competitive energy and in a maximizing positive fashion, I thought for stretches of the game last night he got off of that. I thought Nate just had a tough playoff.
Yeah.
And those are just a couple individual stories, but I think Sebastian did everything that you would ask that he would do. But I do agree with you in stretches in the game last night with the adversity just within Game 4 that the Hurricanes faced. I go back to the beginning of this series. Now, I know that other than the players and the core group that was on the 2019 Eastern Conference finalist Carolina crew, most don't remember prior to that. But I mean, just like you were, I was here in 2009 in the sweep against Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
The last time they won an Eastern Conference final game, and Rod Brindamore got the winner against Buffalo in Game 7 in 2006. So going into the series, thinking about all of that, and that it had been a long period of time since Carolina had won an Eastern Conference final game, and also factoring in whether it be the Boston Bruins winning the first two games last year, the Rangers winning the first two games last year, the Islanders winning the first two games on home ice this year, the Devils winning the first two games on home ice this year, I thought going in that the Hurricanes to beat a team that's of destiny right now in the Florida Panthers, that they were going to have to get in front of the series. And so I really going in thought that they'd have to win for sure one of the first two at home, ideally do what they had done in those previous two home games in several series. So that didn't happen. They gave themselves every chance to accomplish that with their play. And then the other thing that I hoped for, Florida had a significant break after beating Toronto, one less day than Carolina. I hoped that Sergei Bobrovsky would come off of his groove because of the break between series, and we know that didn't happen. So the fact that not only did Bobrovsky remain in the groove, but elevated his groove, and that the Hurricanes, even though they played a game that could have resulted in going down to Florida up 2-0, it wasn't 2-0. They were down 2-0. So I look back to the beginning of the series, and whether it's right or wrong, the perspective that I have, this string of not being able to get just a win in an Eastern Conference final game, those are the reasons, and Carolina's success in all of these games 1 and 2 in the last couple of years at home. That's why I pointed to the beginning of the series, and I still do.
Tripp Tracy is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. When I look at the series, again, I thought Aho had an outstanding playoffs. He didn't have an outstanding conference final. He was good. But he didn't. The best stretch of Sebastian Aho was the first half of Game 3, where he was all over the place in a positive way. I thought Seth Jarvis played very well in the playoffs too, albeit he didn't score as much as he would like, and he had the game on his stick in the first of 4 overtimes in Game 1 of this series. But Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov were the two best forwards going in, probably. If we ranked all the forwards, they were the two best forwards going in, and they played like it. And I think Carolina could use another player, or maybe, I don't know about two, but another player like that to pair with Aho, because right now, other than Svechnikov, I'm not sure Carolina has that.
No, I listen, when I look at, Alexander Barkov and I have an incredibly close personal relationship. And I regret the fact that I told him after they beat the Boston Bruins in 7 games and they went right to Toronto, I had a conversation. I said, Barky, there's more room for you to play just, within the framework of the rules, a nasty game.
Right.
And be harder, and I think he did. Tkachuck, when I look at his series, you look at games 1 and 2, I thought he was unbelievably well contained.
Yep.
Unbelievably well contained. In particular by Shea and Pesce, but he still ended both games in one in the fourth overtime and one early on the power play in the first overtime. and that's what great players do. There is a nastiness to his game. He's a real chirper, but he delivered the goods. And in games 3 and 4, I thought, aside from continuing to produce, I thought that his game really became more consistently evident, aside from the production at the key moments. And, yesterday it was announced that the 3 finalists for the Jim Gregory Award for General Manager of the Year, and Bill Zito was in there. And, I mean, this is a team that was a big-time disappointment for, at least externally, for the majority of the season. But when you think about why Bill got there, it's because of that deal he made. I mean, he hired Paul Maurice after Andrew Brunette in relief of Joel Quenneville. They won the President's Trophy, they won the President's Trophy, and he goes to Paul Maurice. And you can see why now. But the big deal in sending Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar to Calgary and getting Matthew Tkachuk.
Yep.
I have every belief that the Hurricanes were in that mix too. It seems like, and I agree with your assessment, when I look at Aho's play, spectacular against the Islanders and for portions of the New Jersey series, very good early against the Panthers on the power play goals in Game 1 AG, and then his best game was Game 3, first half of Game 3, didn't get rewarded. But the way it typically goes when you get deeper, I never wanted to point to it because I'm consistent with the next man up ideology, and this team inspired being able to not only win, but win with swagger without 37 Svechnikov, without Max Pacioretty really for the whole season. But, I mean, I think you'd be remiss to say that even with the fact that they could have won every game and would make an argument that they were the better team for more stretches of the series against Florida, there's no question they missed Svechnikov. No doubt about it. And so when you start to look at it's still so fresh for me, and the sting is there.
Yep.
When you start to think about how they improved this team that was second best in the NHL, getting Svechnikov back healthy, and that coveted player that can play a heavy game when the stakes ramp up, that can also produce. That is a very coveted player. There aren't a ton of them out there, but they certainly shine in moments like an Eastern Conference final.
Yeah. Before I say goodbye, really just a yes or no. The team could also use their own version of Sam Bennett, who is somebody who can play, maybe as a number 2 center, but plays with an orneriness, a nastiness, because you use that term with Matthew Tkachuk. And Bennett was basically buried in Calgary and has ended up being a huge part of this Florida team. I hate what happened to Jacob Slavin, but I think you believe that the hit was clean. There was helmet-to-helmet contact, but I think the intent was not, to deliver a hit to the head, which is unusual, I think, for Sam Bennett because he plays that way. But the Hurricanes could use that element. So,
yeah, and I know you want yes or no, but a couple really quick things. I think nobody's ever been able to catch Jacob Slavin because of his elusive nature, like Nick Lidstrom. Everybody wants to. And I think Slavin was actually fighting his confidence a little bit as the series wore along, and he got caught. And I want to tell, all the huge Caniacs, it was terrific to see him on the plane coming home last night. That's most important. But, yeah, I mean, that is a hit, much like we just talked about Svechnikov, a clean hit that Svechnikov had on Hampus Lindholm in the Boston series last spring. And you can't put a price tag on it. It was clean in my view. I mean, I went on Twitter. I did not like PK Subban celebrating a guy that means to the game what Slavin does. But the letter, in my view, at the time on a radio broadcast, and is still today, it was a clean hit. And Sam Bennett, the last thing I would say, when Carolina won Game 82 in Florida to win the division,
he won there.
Sam Bennett was not in the lineup.
Yep, he was not. He's a wonderful player, and he plays edgy, and that's okay. You can use that element. Tripp, I will be in touch, sir. Best to your mom, best to Frank. Safe travels up to Michigan, and I will talk to you soon.
AG, I love you, and thank you for just a wonderful journey again with you this season.
We had a blast. We'll do it again.
Thanks, partner.
You got it. Tripp Tracy.